Alan is a 30-year-old hardcore gamer who hasn't seen sunlight in weeks at this point, but who could blame him? He just finished playing a no-hit run on both Sekiro and Dark Souls at the same time. However, now that he's done with that, he needs a new game to play so he doesn't get bored. GTA 6 still isn't out yet, so he starts searching online for another game to play in the meantime, and that's when he comes across a game that never ends. Normally, you'd be concerned about the fact that a game just loaded onto his computer without permission, but he's too captivated to go back now. So he starts scrolling through the settings wheel to set the difficulty. He wants his gaming experience to be as traumatizing as possible, so he turns the difficulty all the way up to hell mode and picks the untested summoner class just to make it even more unpredictable. He then accepts all the terms and conditions without a second thought, but it turns out that there was a clause in there about transporting Alan to another world, so the next thing he knows, he's a newborn baby in the countryside. A year goes by like this, and being a baby isn't as bad as Alan thought it would be. He doesn't have to work or pay any bills, and he has good, loving parents taking care of him. His father's name is Rodin, and his mother is Theresia, and they seem like a lovely couple, but considering the fact that Alan set the game to hell mode, they're likely going to get the Wayne family treatment sooner or later. After Alan is put to bed for the night, he raises his arms and tries all the key phrases he knows in an attempt to open a status screen, because even though he's supposed to be a summoner, he has no idea how the whole summoning thing works. He decides to give it one last try before going to sleep, and this time, something really does appear. But it startles Alan so much that he screams, and his parents come running over to check on him as soon as they hear it, so he is forced to hide the book for now. After making sure Alan is okay, his parents leave his room, and as soon as they are gone, he pulls out his book again. He is so relieved that he finally gets to see his stats after a whole year of trying, and it's around what you would expect for a 1-year-old summoner. His summoning skills are all bottom tier, but the book says they will level up the more he uses them, so Alan decides to give it a try right now. From what he can tell, he's only allowed to summon H-ranked insects and beasts at his current level, but that seems ridiculously weak, so he isn't expecting much. Just then, the book flips to the message section, and Alan finds out that he received a letter from the god of creation of this world. The god basically apologizes for the delay in creating Alan's status book, but since the summoner class was still under development, it took him a whole year to sort through all the necessary paperwork for it. Alan doesn't really care about the apology, but if the god dev team had to rush to finish the summoner class, then there must be some bugs left in there for him to exploit, so he's eager to test it out. He wants to summon an insect first, but he soon realizes that he doesn't actually know how to activate his summoning ability. Normally, he would check the subreddit or watch a tutorial for these kinds of problems, but he doesn't have any internet here, so he's going to have to figure it out on his own. He thinks about it for a few minutes and eventually realizes that he needs to create an insect skill card first, so he gives it a try, and it works perfectly. Now he can finally summon his insect, but before he could do so, his mother comes to check on him again, so Alan is forced to pretend that he's asleep again. The next morning, once his parents are busy with their daily duties, Alan opens his grimoire and finally summons the grasshopper. The room fills with tons of bright lights, and at first, Alan is mesmerized by how pretty it looks, but then a giant grasshopper flies into his face and he freaks out. He eventually realizes that this is the grasshopper he summoned, so he tries to give it instructions. But it turns out that even though it's a summon, it still only has grasshopper intelligence, so it can't understand a word he's saying. On the bright side, Alan finds out that summoning the grasshopper gave him a boost to his agility and endurance stats, and he's really happy about that, but all his celebrating gets his mother's attention, and once she finds the giant grasshopper on the floor, she immediately squishes it. Over the next few days, Alan tinkers with the insect summoning ability, but he's tired of that now, so he decides to try out the beast summon next. He summons a mouse, and once again the book sends it flying straight at his face, but Alan was expecting it this time, so he's not as startled. The mouse comes with its own set of buffs, but it's still pretty dumb, so Alan can't really talk to it. That said, one of its abilities is called Scurry, and whenever Alan tells the mouse to use it, it does so without fail. That said, this mouse's ability is downright useless, so Alan figures he will need to level up his abilities in order to summon some of the more powerful creatures out there. His grimoire says he's allowed to stock up to 10 summoning cards at once, and fortunately, the buffs for each summon stack as well. So if he stacks 10 mouse summon cards, his attack and HP go up by 10. This already makes him stronger than any regular baby, but he's going to have to level up his skills if he wants to become truly overpowered. Normally, this wouldn't be hard to do, but remember how Alan selected Hell mode because he thought the difficulty would be fun? Well, leveling up now requires 100 times the normal amount of experience, so he's going to be stuck grinding for a long time. Just then, Rodden returns from a long day of hunting, and he's completely covered in blood, but it's okay because it's not his blood. He explains that he just hunted a great boar with the other men from the village, and Alan seems really interested, so Rodden asks him if he would like to come see it. Alan excitedly agrees, so Rodden hoists him onto his neck and starts taking him towards the kill site. This is Alan's first time actually getting to see the outside world, so he's enjoying all the new sights, but it took a lot longer to get to the boar than he thought it would, so he ended up falling asleep in Rodden's arms. Once they arrive at the kill site, Rodden wakes Alan up to show him the boar, and Alan is stunned because this thing is absolutely massive, and I'm not even sure how Rodden managed to take it down in the first place. A few moments later, the villagers nearby notice that Rodden has come back, so they all start cheering for him because he is today's MVP. Alan asks if a great boar is really that strong, so Gerda explains that it is a C-ranked monster, and it usually takes at least 20 men to take one down, so they are pretty tough. This info is really useful to Alan because it gives him a solid benchmark on the strength gap between ranks, but before he can even think about summoning any high-ranked monster, Alan is going to have to start grinding XP to level up. 10 months of intense grinding later, Alan has finally risen to a level 2 summoner, and the bump comes with great perks like an all-around boost to his stats, as well as the ability to summon G-rank creatures and fuse them. But doing so requires a lot of MP, so Alan hurriedly eats his dinner to recover some mana and heads back to his room to try it out. Unfortunately, when he opens his grimoire, it tells him he still doesn't have enough mana to fuse any summons because his max MP is too low, so it looks like he's going to need to do even more grinding before he can try anything new. By the time Alan is 3 years old, he has finally raised his MP stats high enough to use his level 2 skill, and with the fusion section, he is able to create a G-rank bird which he names Chappie. Chappie's main skill is Voice Mimic, and it can basically copy any voice perfectly, making it perfect for distracting enemies. Alan was also able to summon a frog and a mole, and the frog's only ability is to jump up and down while flashing as a distraction, but the mole is a lot more active and can dig a giant hole in a matter of seconds. The G-rank monster skills are a lot more useful than the H ranks, so Alan is finally starting to enjoy the gaming experience in this world, but it's still going to take a long time before he's strong enough to actually fight anything. And speaking of fighting, Gerda's daughter, Krina, comes looking for Alan because she wants to play with him. Krina's idea of playing is challenging him to a duel, and normally, this wouldn't be a problem, but she's way too strong for Alan to keep up with. He even went all out with his summon buffs just to give himself a fighting chance, but he's still no match for her. By the end of the day, Alan and Krina return home, and apparently, while Alan has been grinding his XP this past year, Rodden and Theresia were getting busy because she's pregnant again. Since his mother can't do much physical labor anymore, Alan volunteers to help with the harvest to make things easier for Rodin. He is sure he can do it because with all his buffs, he pretty much has the strength and stamina of an adult now. But Theresia and Rodden don't think it would be fair to make their son work, so they tell him he should just stick to doing basic house chores and playing with Krina. Rodden reminds him that he will eventually grow up and have to get a job, so he should enjoy his time as a kid while he doesn't need to work. Alan is a little upset about being turned down at first, but then he remembers that farm work is unbelievably grueling work, and no father would want to force their 3-year-old to do that kind of work, so he agrees to let it go. Rodden is glad to see that Alan understands, but as they continue with dinner, Theresia recalls seeing Alan in the backyard throwing rocks at a tree a little while ago, so she asks him what that was all about. Alan says he was just practicing for self-defense in case a monster attacks their home, but in reality, he was trying to see if he can learn skills aside from summoning by repeating an action over and over, but he didn't have much luck with that. Rodden is impressed by Alan's work ethic and says he can't wait for his appraisal ceremony. Alan has never heard of the appraisal ceremony before, so he asks Rodden what it is, and he is informed that when you turn 5, you are appraised to find out what talents you may have. And if Alan is lucky enough to receive a powerful talent, he might become very rich and successful in the future. Winter rolls around, and Alan decides to summon a grasshopper out in the snow to see how long it can survive, and it lasts a whole day out here, so he's pretty satisfied. However, that satisfaction quickly fades away when Krina comes outside and starts asking him to fight her again. Unsurprisingly, Alan ends up getting his ass handed to him. But while he was busy with his duel against Krina, he completely forgot about the grasshopper he summoned, and it ends up crawling onto Theresia's leg, scaring her so much that she ends up falling over. And falling over while pregnant is a big deal. Rodin runs over to check on her, and she says she's fine, but she clearly isn't because that fall just sent her into labor, so the baby's coming today whether they like it or not. Rodin tells Krenna to go call her mother for help, and once she arrives, she helps Theresia through the delivery process. So by morning, the family has a brand new baby boy. Everyone is overjoyed, but Alan doesn't know how he should feel about this. He still isn't sure why a game reincarnated him into this world. But even though it was unexpected, he didn't have much going for him back in Japan, so he's not upset with how things turned out. That's why he has decided to focus solely on leveling up and protecting his new family, because they matter the most to him. This was the end of episode 1. Subscribe to not miss the next part.